Hello and welcome back to Finding Perfect Property, Diary of a Buying Agent. I'm your host, Camilla Dell, and today is a really special episode because I'm joined by the entire London buying agent team at Black Brick to give our thoughts on the year ahead, 2025, our predictions for how we think the prime central London property market is going to play out. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of the market, I'd love to introduce my team to everybody listening today. So I'm going to start with Tom. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Kain. I'm a partner here at Black Brick. I've been working at the firm just over 11 years. I started off my career as an estate agent in South Kensington, subsequently ended up at Black Brick, latterly now helping our clients find and acquire property in central London.
And Tom, you've been in the business for 11 years now?
Well, 11 years working here, but almost 20 in the industry.
Yeah. But 11 years at Black Brick and you're now a partner?
Yes.
Which is fantastic.
Yes.
So really great career. Good to have you on the show today, Tom. And Dom, our newest member of the team, tell us a little bit about your background before you joined Black Brick.
Yeah, thanks, Camilla. So, joined in September this year. Prior to Black Brick, I was an estate agent working across sort of the prime central and southwest parts of London, most recently with Savills in the Knightsbridge office. And I spent 13 years within property. Really enjoyed it from the estate agency side, but I think actually it was time where I wanted to be more on the advising side and really helping clients to find that sort of perfect property, whether it's a house to live in or investment. So really looking forward to a career with Black Brick and helping on the buying side, and see how it goes.
Brilliant, thank you, Tom. And Tom, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Tom Coate. I'm one of the buying consultants here. So I joined Black Brick at the beginning of the year. I was an agent prior to that for about 12 years, actually, working in southwest and parts of central London. And I think a big factor in me wanting to become a buying agent is sort of giving the buyers and our clients a bit of a redress compared to the advice that they're perhaps getting from a frontline estate agent, providing them with informed market knowledge and understanding about the markets that they're looking in and also the properties that they're looking at as well, to ensure they can make the confident right decision on the property that they go on to acquire.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, everyone. Great to have a podcast with all of us on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, first of all, before we get into the predictions of 2025, I always think it's nice to perhaps just look back at the year we've just had and kind of give everybody our take on 2024, were there any hidden surprises in there, sort of generally how we all felt the market was last year for us as buying agents, but also for our clients. Tom, have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, it was a really interesting year because I think we had a few milestones that we worked through, namely the UK general election, the autumn budget and the US general election. So they were some quite big geopolitical events and landmarks that I think were in the front of people's minds when they were looking to take a decision on where to invest and where to buy a property. So we had times when the market sort of ebbed and flowed, I would say, and people quite understandably in the lead up to those events, I think sort of took stock and wanted to see, the results of those events. But generally, there were lots of interesting transactions that happened. Central London was still a very busy market generally. And so it's been a very interesting year to work through. I'm expecting next year, and we'll probably go on to this a little bit more, to be a little bit more stable. People probably understanding a little bit more about where things lie. And so it might be different in that sense. But this year, was definitely one of working through a few different
hurdles.
Yeah.
And Tom and Dom, any kind of looking back on 2024, anything that stands out to either of you in terms of the market and what you experienced?
I think, completely agree with what Tom said. And I think on top of that, with the inflationary environment we've sort of had across the year and expectations of interest rates coming down, but maybe taking that a little bit longer to come, it's interesting to see how that sentiment has slightly changed throughout the year. But what has been noticeable is there have been some good opportunities out there. I think when buyers have seen something and they're in a good position. We've seen some really good sales happen, and actually started the year on the other side, from the selling side. It's very interesting, sort of switching now onto the buyer's side and understanding where those sellers' mentalities were sort of for the first, 2/3 of this year, from where I was working on that, which was very much understanding, does a sale now allow me to do that move going onward? And I guess ultimately from the buyer's side, it's, the other side, does this opportunity present itself to allow me to do what I want to do, or should I wait that little bit longer? So it's been a good, challenging, but some good opportunities for buyers alike.
Tom, any?
Yeah, very similar. I mean, it's been a market that we've really had to navigate. There's been a lot of factors that have come up in the market that has caused clients and buyers to sort of rethink and readjust and reassess where they're looking at buying, or whether they're buying just yet, or waiting until the market tends to sort of settle down a little bit after these events. But it's been an interesting year. Yeah,
I think for me, looking back, what is quite surprising is, as buying agents, for the last 20 years, I've often said to clients, one of the biggest challenges that we have as buying agents is lack of stock, particularly in super prime London. And that's one of the reasons why clients come to us, is because they're finding it really difficult to find what they want. I found, certainly with our searches at kind of 5 million and above, actually the supply has been far less of an issue in 2024 than I've ever experienced. Searches that we were doing in Mayfair for apartments, where typically we might have struggled to come up with one or two really great options. Suddenly we had a list of 10 things to show a client who was looking in Mayfair this year. So I found that quite surprising, just this big increase in supply. But Tom, I know you had some challenges in 2024 at the other end of the market, up to 2 million for family houses. Tell us a little bit about what you experienced there.
Yeah, I think several searches that I've done, sort of North London, West London, Southwest London as well. Within that market between 1.5 and 2.5 million, there really is a bit of a pocket of pressure in these little mini markets throughout London. You've got factors that I'm sure we'll go on to regarding sort of private school fees that are definitely impacting families' decisions in terms of where they're moving and what they want to move into as well. So that availability of stock, slightly sort of contrasting with what you were saying in the sort of the upper prime, super prime markets, within the 1.5 to 2.5 million market, whenever something is coming onto the market, or the stock levels there are very much in short supply for good quality family houses in good catchments for state primary schools or state secondary schools, or within certain distance of certain transports as well. So those typical family houses are generally held on to for a lot longer than other areas throughout London. So we're seeing that the lack of stock in those markets for the typical family house has definitely created a price, not necessarily an increase, but definitely a sort of increase the
competition. Super competitive. Yeah. So very different markets. So let's look ahead to 2025. I think for the first year ever, we've got just such an array of different forecasts out there. Normally, the big agents like Knight Frank and Savills, there's normally not much in the differences in their 1 year and 5 year forecasts, like maybe 0.5%. And, we've got Savills predicting that the prime central London market will go down by 4% next year and will grow by 9% over the course of the next 5 years, contrasted with Knight Frank, who are predicting that actually prices in prime central London will go up a little bit next year, and then over the course of the next 5 years go up by, almost 20%. So who's right? Who's wrong? Tom, any thoughts?
$10 million question. I think undoubtedly, the changes as a result of the budget, and actually before that with them taking away their non-dom status, will feed into the prime markets, and it feels like there'll be a natural downward pressure on prices of certain properties in that kind of sector. Although what we're seeing in the initial stage, in kind of contrast to that, is that a lot of people, even if they are, domiciling outside the UK, are looking to hold on to properties in central London. So any downward pressure there might be, balanced off a bit by that, So it's always, to pinpoint pricing, and I always find it funny how the estate agents can be so precise in some of their percentage point predictions on that is a very difficult thing to do. But I think, to me, we obviously aware of those tax changes. Also, second home purchases being 2% more expensive.
Yeah.
On SDLT, we're aware of that. But going forward, people just knowing exactly where they stand and no other significant changes being mooted will allow people to take a decision. And there may be a slight adjustment on price, but I think people have a lot more confidence to take a decision and plan going forward.
Yeah. And Tom, any thoughts, any sort of predictions on how you think the market's going to go in 2025?
I'm not going to put a percentage on it, but I think very much as Tom said, I think next year prices will remain quite soft. I think it will be some really good opportunities for buyers out there. I think the first 6 months will probably it'll take a good 6 months sort of for that tax landscape to settle down, for people really to ultimately understand where they are, what they're doing, whether they want to buy or sell or rent in that sort of super prime market. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But I think the domestic market will slowly gather pace throughout the year. I think, as Tom said, we haven't got any big major hurdles next year. With the elections being done, the US elections done. So it's now really seeing how that sort of all falls into place. But I think sentiment will slowly grow.
Yeah.
Interest rates, whilst they'll probably remain higher for a bit longer, they are still predicted to come down over the course of next year, which will free up some more wealth and ultimately more buyers will come into the market. So I think it will pick up momentum, but I think there'll be some good opportunity out there. I can't see prices certainly going up. I think they'll remain fairly similar how they have been over the last 6 months.
Yeah. Tom?
I think domestically for these families and these buyers that are sort of moving in and around the market, I think we'll see that market gather a little bit of pace as we go in towards next year, as interest rates start to come down, as what we're expecting them to do so. So that buyer that's looking to take on debt will slowly start coming out into the market now that there'll be a bit more certainty in that where the rates are going to be at. So demand for those types of properties that we've discussed is still going to be very high, and I think supply is still going to be quite low. So there's definitely going to be an upward pressure in pricing on those sort of domestic properties for those family professional buyers that are looking to sort of buy, reside, work and educate within the UK.
Yeah.
And then parts of prime central London as well. There'll continue to be that sort of downward pressure in a few of the a bit more supply coming to the market. These clients looking to sort of exit the market, get out of the UK, and sell on their assets. So I think we'll see a bit of a contrast throughout different pockets of London.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be an interesting year.
Yeah. I think sort of my predictions for next year, obviously we have got stamp duty changing for first-time buyers. I know we don't look after many first-time buyers at Blackbrick, but 1st of April, the threshold is going down, and so it will become more expensive for first-time buyers post-April. So I think at the lower end of the market, we actually might see a lot of activity in the first quarter of next year. And even though they're not necessarily our direct client base, that does create, positive momentum, and we may see a lot of positivity coming out in data that actually the market is quite active and perhaps prices are going up in certain pockets of the market, more domestic, prime outer London, sub 500,000 part of the market. And that, even if you're working for a hedge fund and looking to spend 20 million on a house, if you're reading the papers and seeing quite a lot of positive data around first-time buyer movement, I think we could see actually quite a positive start to the year, and then perhaps a bit of a lag once that threshold has been reduced. I think the other thing that's interesting as well next year is we've got the changes around UK res non-doms coming into effect in April as well. And so we might start to see new entrants come into the market and, but rather than buy, they may look to rent. I think in our own data at Blackbrick, we've seen an 8% increase in our rental searches that we're doing at the moment. And, potentially in 2025, we may see more rental searches that we're looking after and advising tenants rather than buyers coming into the UK, relocating to London, and they're not quite sure how long they're going to be here for under that new UK res non-dom regime. So could be quite interesting. I want to talk a little bit. We get asked a lot as buying agents in terms of up and coming areas, or if you were investing into the market today, where would you put your money? Any thoughts on that, Tom?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. In the most central parts of London, for the reasons we've discussed just previously, I think pricing could be quite muted. So in terms of, price increases, that could be quite muted. One area I do really like, which we've acquired some really nice properties in for clients, is King's Cross, because it's had such a dramatic makeover over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
It is well put together in terms of there's one overall landlord or developer who has overseen the changes there. So it does feel like it's been very well, made and put together. And it's so well connected. It's very central. The key, obviously, is always at what price you can buy a property at, and how much potential there is within that for it to grow. But there are some excellent quality properties there in a very central location, which is incredibly well connected.
Yeah,
they're redeveloping Euston Station next doors as well, which will bring HS2 in. And we've seen with transport infrastructure upgrades in the past, they've often stimulated new interest in price grade. So I think King's Cross is an area which will be interesting going forward.
Okay, Tom, Dom, if the world was your oyster and you could buy anything in London, what would you put your money on by 2025?
For me, I think, having worked in the market for the last 10 or so years, I do think that sort of prime Knightsbridge, Belgravia, Chelsea area is due a bit of growth over the coming years. We haven't really seen. I mean, it's we're still about 18% down from the peak of the market in 2014, around there. So I do think there's some good opportunity there, and I'm not saying it's going to fly up over the next couple of years, but I think there's definitely some really good options in there.
Yeah.
At really quite competitive price when you compare it to other sort of prime parts of London, whether it's Mayfair or Regent's Park or up at sort of St John's Wood. It's a really good spot. Great schools as well, well connected, great shopping, all around the King's Road, Sloane Square. They've invested huge money in retail and restaurants around there. So it's just a lovely neighbourhood. It's had a real sort of re-energise as well. And it's, I think, a very good, really good area.
Brilliant.
I think being in a higher interest rate environment that we're in, we're definitely seeing buyers and clients that are looking to maybe make that jump a little bit further, rather than what historically they'd moved from a sort of a flat into a house, into a sort of a slightly larger house. We've done a search with a client that have made a rather large jump from renting a smaller apartment to actually moving slightly further out to Ealing, which has amazing transport connections in towards central London on the Elizabeth line. An area like that where they can get a large 5-bedroom detached house and grow as a family over the next 10 to 15 years are definitely buyers and clients that we're speaking to. They're just wanting to have something more long term than historically would have been, especially where interest rates are, wanting to have something a bit more certain, and the cost of acquiring properties with how stamp duty is and other costs that are associated with that as well. They're wanting to make that move for a longer period of time, rather than sort of moving up the market across that sort of domestic market that we deal with as well.
So your money would be on a nice terrace 4-bed house up to 2 million.
Yeah, something that's well connected, has great green space, has a great high street, and I think those sort of markets, not necessarily just Ealing, but other areas throughout London that offer that to clients are going to be areas that are going to do very well.
I think I'm with you on that. Certainly with the searches that we've seen during 2024, just the level of competition for those family houses suggests that is a good place to be putting money. I think from my perspective, if money were no object and I could buy anything at the moment, I'd be looking for a deal, because you all know how I love a deal. So I'd be really looking at the super prime market, 10 million plus, for quality, but also where I can identify a really motivated / potentially distressed seller, and just taking advantage of the market. I think, 2025 will absolutely continue to be a buyer's market, for a good chunk of the year. I can't really see things changing much to alter that in that part of the market. So I think I'd be looking for a deal, definitely. I want to ask the team, because you've all been estate agents. I actually have never been an estate agent, so you've got one over me on that. You've all sort of seen things from the other side and now have come across as buying agents. What sort of classic mistakes do you see that unadvised buyers make when they don't have somebody like us advising them? What as estate agents, what are some of the things that you saw with your applicants back in the day when you were selling, not buying?
I think a big thing for me is they don't ask questions. Generally, when you're out there with an agent, you're seeing several properties. You might know the area fairly well. You might know the property that you're looking at fairly well, but actually asking in-depth questions about the property's history, about the owner's position, what their motivation is to sell, how long they've lived there, the work they've carried out on the property, why they bought the house as well is a really important question to understand the sort of client's motivations. But also what their onward plans are going to be like as well. Are they going to be in a chain? Are they going to be linking in a purchase? So all these questions regarding both the property and the owner are really important questions that I think, being typically British, people tend not to ask too many questions or don't want to sort of seem too pushy. So I think it's really important that you do ask those questions. And if it's a good agent, they'll obviously have these answers ready for you, but that's a big thing for me, is just actually asking the questions and doing research is a really big thing that buyers should be doing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Dom, anything?
I think sort of what I've really noticed is ultimately buyers having the knowledge in terms of pricing when they go in to negotiate. A lot of buyers are very educated, a lot aren't though, and whilst an estate agent has their guide price and are going on local comparables, etc., as to why they got that, from a buying side, there can be a lot more to ultimately negotiating that price, whether it's other opportunities or defects with the property or something. And I think a lot of people, similar to what Tom was saying, just aren't aware of the sort of the comparables out there, and ultimately that's where we can come in and say, right, this is really where it should be. Now, it could be it's a very popular property and you have to pay a fuller price.
Yeah.
Or actually it might be that there's more room for negotiation and we can really advise, say, look, this is what it's worth, truly worth in the market. Happy to go over if you think it's, if it's the right property, but so you're aware. And it's just about that awareness ultimately. And then when they come to sell in a few years' time, depending on where the market is, they're not going to be stung too hard.
Definitely.
I think in the prime markets especially, it's the amount of property that's being sold off market, and navigating that landscape is really difficult as a buyer. So many different estate agents you need to be registered with and speak to. They range from multi-office, multinational agents sometimes, right down to sort of one-man band people who maybe don't even have an office premises. So just fully understanding what is actually for sale, and what the true price of that is, and that links into understanding comparable sales data and where prices should be for various things, I think is one of the major benefits of working with a buying agent. But it's certainly a real challenge as a buyer. It's not necessarily property specific in terms of the individual property, but it's just fully understanding what is actually for sale and making sure you're aware of every opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Tom. And I think, if I look back at 2007, when Blackbrick first started, and fast forward to today, just the sheer volume of agents has exploded. I looked this up, and there are 7,300 estate agents in London today. In Kensington and Chelsea alone, there are 235 estate agents. And then obviously we've also got other channels that we have to look at as buying agents when we're searching for our clients, from all of the WhatsApp groups that have now been set up to the different platforms. And obviously you've got the portals, and then you've got to look at genuine off-market as well. I mean, it's an absolute minefield. I just think that without a buying agent, how do you get access? I mean, if you're just relying on the portals like Rightmove and being registered with one or two agents, you're probably seeing half the market maybe not even that. So it's I do think that the market has become a lot more complex, and I think that has meant that the need for what we do has become greater, and I think that will continue to be a trend in 2025. The need for buying agents is going to be very, very high because of all the noise and and how do you get access. What do you think is the best bit about being a buying agent? What's the most enjoyable thing about what we do?
Oh, there are many enjoyable aspects. I guess undoubtedly the opportunity to walk into some of the best properties in London, and see those on a regular basis is a real pleasure, really, in terms of it being a profession.
Yeah.
And, that's certainly not a hard part of the job.
Yeah.
Building relationships with clients as well. We've done some really interesting pieces of business this year, which have been off the back of our relationships that we've built with our clients and really understood and had a really strong bond with them.
Yeah.
And so that is a satisfactory part of the job. But I think undoubtedly, when you walk into something and you think, wow, this is really special, that's such a great, it's the reason why.
And you've got the match and the client's going to like it.
Absolutely. And I have another story. I think, we might lead into this with another question later, but clients really trusting your advice and appreciating something that you've got access to is that's great for you then.
Yeah, I mean, I think exactly what Tom said. Being able to go into some properties that you'll never normally walk into is a real treat with this role, and exploring different parts of London as well. Whether it's Marylebone and King's Cross, some of the outer parts, it's great. You get to explore all sorts of areas and really get to know them in depth with the research we have to do for clients. So that's good. And then on the client side, just meeting some amazing people, all walks of life and looking to buy for different reasons, different parts of the world. It's
Tom, what have been the highlights of being a buying agent?
Yeah, I think building those relationships with clients is great. And I think understanding a brief and matching that brief with properties that we're able to get into and go out into the market and find for them is a really rewarding experience. Yeah. But also sort of doing that further investigation, that further sort of deep dive on the property and really being able to come back to our clients with sort of deep understanding of the property, the market, the price of the property in the local market as well, to provide sound advice on what they will end up going for.
I think what I love most about being a buying agent is the diversity of clients that we get to look after. In terms of what they do professionally, but also in terms of where they come from, and their families and their cultures, and really, really understanding what makes our clients tick. And also, I think what I really love about what we do as well is the trust that our clients place in us when it comes to finding their family homes. A lot of our clients are extremely successful people and at the top of their field, some of them, but when it comes to buying their property, buying their home, they're trusting us to do that for them. And I just think we're incredibly lucky and privileged in a way to get to do that for some incredible clients. So I think from my perspective, that's definitely something that I really enjoy and still enjoy 20 years later. In terms of acquisitions that you've done for clients, if you sort of had to pick one that was particularly memorable because it was either challenging or super enjoyable, what would it be?
Yeah, good leading question after what we've just been discussing, because I had some lovely American clients, very much in the profile of what you've just mentioned, very successful finance professionals, who we worked with for a number of months to try and find them a London property that they'd use up to 3 months a year. They came over a couple of times for viewings. Saw some good options. None quite hit the mark that they wanted to bid on. Then a property came up which I felt was absolutely perfect for them. A beautiful lateral flat in Kensington being sold off market. We were the first people to get access, but I knew, when I walked in, it was the perfect property for them. So I called them in California and said, you have to trust me. I think this is the one. And thankfully they did. And they booked a flight to come over 3 days later flew over just to see the property, stayed overnight, and then flew back to California again.
Wow.
We ended up submitting an offer, agreeing terms. 3 months later, we exchanged the contracts. So that relationship and them trusting my knowledge of their search, what they wanted, knowledge of the area, was obviously evident in the fact that they were willing just to drop everything, fly over and fly back, overnight.
Yeah, it was really great outcome for them, and just brilliant that they, trusted you to, fly over. It's not a cheap thing to do. So that was a great transaction. Well done, Tom. Dom, any highlights?
Yeah, I mean, only 3 months in, but there is one. I mean, I've been working with a really lovely client who they're based in the UK, looking for a pied-à-terre, and in particular sort of around the Marylebone area, which is near where their office is for work. And it's just been a really nice journey, a really nice search to get involved with, because they know the area, but they don't know much about sort of the property market, values, etc. So whilst I've I've previewed probably up to about 40 properties for them. It's been really enjoyable to sort of do that deep dive into the data, explain to them sort of the different values, different price points. Their search has changed a little bit as we've gone along, in terms of the budget, just so they can really understand and get what they want. We've secured a property at the moment that we're proceeding with, but we're not quite there. But it's been a good one to sort of get involved with first up, and hopefully exchange a scene.
Tom, highlights for you?
I think earlier in the year there was an acquisition we did in Fulham for a lovely couple. It was quite a journey that we went on with them. So there were countless properties I went out and inspected and previewed on behalf of them within Fulham and Parsons Green. We managed to identify on several occasions properties that were of interest, and we went through the stage of offering. But because of the sort of the fierce nature of competition in that market, especially, there were several times where we actually missed out on a couple of properties. But we persevered, and we managed to get into a few of the properties. And I advised them to look at a property that perhaps wasn't initially being considered, in the fact that it needs a little bit of work compared to properties that are wanting that were turnkey, ready to move into condition. But I managed to identify a property that required a little bit of work. And one thing with Black Brick, we had a great team of not only sort of buying agents, but also our sort of black book of contacts throughout the industry. So designers, solicitors, finance individuals as well. And I managed to put them in touch with an interior designer who we work very closely with. They were able to provide quotes and an understanding of what the costs and the implications of doing the necessary works the property were going to be. And all of that sort of tailored sound advice in a package to our clients made that property really make sense to them to move on. And we managed to sort of complete several months after that as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think you raise a really great point, which is obviously, what we do is just one part of the picture, isn't it? We're reliant on so many other great professionals to help support our clients. And I think you're right. We've got an amazing black book of tried and tested contacts now across all different industries that we can bring to the table and really add a lot of value to our clients, which is great. I'm throwing in a curveball question, team. Don't hate me for this. But I think, when we look at the property industry, not much has changed. Well, I mean, we know there's prop tech, there's AI. We're kind of, we talk as a team about, chat GPT and how it can help us, write questions for a podcast and things like that. But, if you could change something about the property industry to make it easier for us or to make it easier for buyers or whoever, what would you want to change?
Undoubtedly, for me, it would be anything that helps speed up the transaction once terms have been agreed. I don't know whether AI will open some doors for us or help the speed. Hopefully it will. I think if there's a way that AI can be positive within our industry, then that would be it. Whether it's helping lawyers, communicate more readily or access data more readily, whether it's local government being able to send the relevant information at every level during that conveyancing process. It would be great if we could help both buyers and sellers to transact more quickly, because I think there is in almost all cases a desire to do that.
Yeah.
So I think if there is any entrepreneurs out there who think they can monetize that process, I think there's a gap in the market. I mean, recently we acquired something that was a probate sale, and it should have been relatively straightforward in that, unfortunately, the mother had passed away and was passing to her 2 children, but they were her children. It was direct, passing of the property to a family member, and it took something like 8 months for probate to be granted. So, maybe this is more on a governmental level, but things like that, it's very stressful for all parties involved. So if we could speed up that process, I think it would make a huge difference to our industry.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really valid point. Don, Tom, any thoughts?
I think from my side, probably if maybe as an industry could be a bit more collaborative as a whole would be quite good. I think it would be, and it feeds kind of maybe into what Tom's saying as well, is that there's a lot of different parties, there's a lot of moving pieces, and a lot of people with different clients. I think there's definitely an opportunity for people to be a bit more collaborative when it comes to, I guess from our side, going to agents for instructions rather than going to how many thousands of estate agents. If there's a more streamlined way of doing it where there's more sharing involved, then that would be good. But I appreciate it doesn't always work like that. But yeah.
Tom, any thoughts?
I mean, I'll echo what Tom said in terms of the speed of a transaction within the UK and within London at the moment. Having necessary information available from the outset, I think, would be a crucial thing in the future. There was a thing called home information packs,
yes,
but those that remember that weren't unfortunately done terribly well when they initially launched. But I think having some form of survey, some form of legal documentation that's readily available to solicitors and buyers will help streamline the whole process. And there are countless times where a property would be under offer for a certain amount of time, a survey would be conducted, and there'll be things that are unearthed that may not have been sort of noticeable to the naked eye, but could have been made aware from the outset had a survey been carried out prior to even engaging in negotiation. So I think it definitely is a sort of a buyer beware scenario when you're buying a property in the UK. Into England and Wales, Scotland has a sort of slightly different system, as we know, in terms of how they go about things. So I think something that would allow buyers access to relevant information from the outset help them make a better decision on things and hopefully speed up that whole process.
I think that's a really good point. Before the buyer outlays a lot of cost.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I want to talk just a little bit about being a buying agent, becoming a buying agent. I think a lot of estate agents or a lot of people looking at the market want to be buying agents. Do you have any sort of top tips if someone came to you tomorrow and said, I really want to be a buying agent, how do I get into the industry? What would be some top tips that you might give them how to do it?
I think being super detailed is incredibly important to make sure that you understand analysis of properties, of markets, and what really drives prices in those markets as well. Being very organized is a really big factor. So I think being detailed, being organized, and being sort of personable, I think, with not only your clients but also agents, because it is, being a buying agent, it is all about not necessarily the properties that are out there, but the network that you're able to sort of build up and develop to allow you to gain access to these properties that are on or off the market.
100%. Don, what would be your top tips for somebody wanting to be a buying agent?
I think first of all, having that experience on the agency side is important. What we do is detailed, and people rely on us for our advice, all parts of the search and the transaction and thereafter. So I think that's important. I think, I worked with Blackbrick in the past when I was an estate agent, and I've worked with many others, but I knew sort of who the top ones were, as it were. So when I was making that decision and that transition over, I kind of knew which direction I wanted to go in if I was going to jump onto the buying side. So, use your experience in terms of who you've used before and your contacts within buying side to make that decision if you want to make the move.
Yeah.
I think some of the skills you need are not actually ones that people would think are obvious.
Yeah.
People think our job's about just going around and looking at nice properties, and that's actually only quite a small part of it.
You heard it here first, everybody.
I've often thought if I had a degree in psychology when I started this and maybe did a short course on hostage negotiation or something, that would actually be more useful than, some of the other agency skills. But I think to be a successful buying agent, you do need to draw together lots of skills. And it is not as an easy job. I think a lot of my friends think it is.
No.
So, being all of the things the guys mentioned, being strong on numbers, being a good communicator, really understanding your clients and their motivations and their psychology.
Yeah.
I think they're the key areas. Yeah.
I think that's very wise words, Tom. I think from my side, I obviously do quite a lot of the interviewing at Black Brick when people come here wanting to work with us. And, I always say to people, there are no shortcuts, when I see people, sending CVs with no property experience, thinking that they can just be a buying agent from day one, I always say to them, look, learn the industry first. You can't possibly start advising buyers on the market and the intricacies of that if you haven't first learnt the ropes and really understood the market first. And the best way to do that is work for the best company you can in the area that you want to specialise in and really get to know and understand that market well. I think I'm going to sound very old now, but young people just want everything really quickly and, without having to work for it. And I think to be a really great buying agent, takes time and skill and experience. And the best place to do that first is working for the best agency you can. 2025, I think it's really difficult to know, where the market's going to go. But I think the thing that I'm looking forward to the most in 2025 is just getting some amazing deals done for clients. I think we've got a lot of clients that have been sitting and waiting, and they're looking to buy homes. I think, most of our clients today are mainly looking for homes or second homes rather than investing, but they also want to take advantage of a really great market. And I think 2025 is the year to do that. I really genuinely feel it's going to be a great buyer's market, and we're going to get some amazing transactions done and buy really, really well for our clients, not just great quality, but also brilliant pricing from the buyer's perspective. Tom, what about you?
What you always want as a buying agent is choice, and you don't always have that, and we haven't had that in years gone by. Yeah. So I think looking forward, the really exciting thing for us is that we'll have choice, we'll have properties to look at and recommend to our clients.
Yeah.
Which is, just the best thing for us, really. I mean, Tom mentioned he's done a search recently that he agreed on a property on and looked at 40 houses in Marylebone, which has traditionally been quite a tough area to find good stock in. So for us, that really sets the tone and gives us a real basis by which to help our clients.
100%. Brilliant. Well, that brings us to the end of the London Buying Agent Team episode for Finding Perfect Property, Diary of a Buying Agent. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, team, for coming on the podcast today and being the guests. Hopefully, everyone listening today has taken some golden nuggets about the market, our predictions for 2025, and key reasons to work with buying agents and how we can help. So thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe on whatever channel you use.